All right, welcome to the show this evening. Sorry we're running a couple minutes late. Matt will be along here in a bit, and but my our guest Chris Sotomayor is not here, so that's all that really matters right now. So, hi Chris, how's it going?
Hi, Chad. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I want to thank you for kind of taking the time to talk, and because I know when I contacted you about the show, I was like, I don't know if I've always wanted to to talk to you because I love your work and.
Oh, thank you. I'm flattered.
But
Thank you.
So, but before we get into talking about, coloring and stuff like that, tell me about your comic books journey as a reader and as a professional.
Oh man. Okay. Well, I started reading comics late '70s, early '80s. I bought comics off the newsstand back then. I remember one of the first comics my dad bought me was Marvel 2-in-1 '69 with the Thing and the Guardians of the Galaxy, the
Hmm.
original ones with Yondu and Astro and them. And I remembered seeing those characters on the cover, and they just kind of drew me in. They were like so different from anything I'd ever seen. Up until then, like my comic book character exposure was reruns of the old '66 Batman show or the old '60s Marvel cartoons that were in syndication on like Channel 11 in New York. Um, yeah, so buying comics off the newsstand is what got me in. They were accessible. Whenever I'd go with my parents on the subway, we'd always pass a newsstand, and they'd pick something up for me. X Men 150, Captain America. I couldn't even tell you what number it was, but that was a way for me to get into reading because I wasn't much of a reader when I was little. Uh, and seeing these characters and being engaged by, all the capes and tights and stuff, it hooked me in, and I fell in love with it really quickly. So, um,
All right,
yeah.
all right. So, kind of what made you say, "This is what I want to get into"? Hey, hello.
Hi. Sorry, I am not a very good host this week.
Hi,
Thank you
Matt.
for hanging out with us. I'm Matt.
Hi, how you doing?
Hey, it's nice to have you on board.
Thank you, thank you. Nice to
So,
So
be here.
I jumped right in as you were asking a question, Chad. I'm sorry.
no, I was just going to let you know that the first question I kind of asked him was to kind of talk about his introduction to comics
Yeah,
as a reader.
fantastic place to start.
And so, what made you want to get into you know doing comics yourself?
Well, I mean, when I was little, I had no idea that there were artists behind this stuff. I didn't give it a second thought. It was just, comics are these things, and I love them, and Spider Man and Batman, and very cool. Um, but as I got older, I made the connection that there were artists involved and creators involved, and Dave Cockrum was probably one of the first artists I recognized, reading X Men comics, and then John Byrne took over, and I started looking at that stuff and uh, Paul Smith, and then I started remembering names and started following artists. Whether it was John Byrne moving on to Fantastic Four, or Paul Smith on Doctor Strange, or Frank Miller on Daredevil. I started to make these connections, um, and I figured these people must get free comics. So yeah, I'm all for free comics.
Who
And then I
isn't?
realized they got paid. Once I made that connection, I was like, well, this is something I really want to do. And yeah, it was just I grew to love comics at a real early age, at like 4 or 5. Right after I saw Star Wars in the theaters, and it just like Star Wars ignited my imagination. And then there were these comics, and these were awesome too. And just from really early on, I knew this was something that I wanted to be a part of my life forever. So yeah, I probably drove my parents nuts with that stuff.
Would you say, or would your parents say that you were artistically inclined prior to discovering comics, or do you think one kind of fed into the other?
I think comics definitely kicked that off for me. I would start tracing Spider-Man from Marvel Team Up or whatever, and I'd start practicing drawing, and then I'd look at other artists and try to practice their drawings the way they did them and try to understand them. And then I'd say right around junior high, I got my first art books, which were the George Bridgman constructing figures books, and that really opened it up for me. Then I started really getting into the art of it, not just tracing images or copying images from comics, but starting to understand how the head is constructed and starting to make those very small connections. I wasn't going crazy developing forms and structures and stuff, but just realizing like where the eyes go was a big deal for me. Figures had shoulders, things like that.
So what was your first comic book that you like put together, like official comic book, not official comic book, but the first time you tried putting something to the format?
I mean, when I was a kid, I tried to draw my own Spider-Man comics. I don't know if that counts on lined paper. I got in a lot of trouble for that. I would work on those drawings after, like, I'd finish a test in school or something, and I would get in so much trouble. There was this one teacher, Miss O'Malley, when I was in elementary school, and she would get so angry with me. She'd grab my papers and kind of crumple them up and throw them away, and it's very discouraging. But I didn't let any of that stop me. I just kept going.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Now she probably wishes she had them in her family.
Get me started on her. She was horrible. Oh man.
So when do you think you got your first big break in comics?
My first break. I think my first break was being introduced to another comic book artist.
Mhm.
When I was in art school, I had a part-time job. Part-time. It was damn near full-time. I had a job working at a supermarket, trying to put myself through art school. And working there, I ran into Dennis Cowan, who at the time was wrapping up on Deathlock, I think, and starting to dive into the creation of the Milestone imprint. Um, he introduced me to one of the other founders, Michael Davis, and that kind of kicked everything off for me because Michael had a studio, like a class/studio, where he would kind of mentor other artists coming into the business. Anyone who had a love for the medium, he'd bring in, and we'd have homework assignments and competitions, and we'd talk and we get to know each other. There were like 15 other kids in there around my age, maybe a little older. John Paul Leon was in there, Sean Martinborough was in there, Bernard Chang. Uh, you know, it was an amazing time,
Yeah.
and just being in that group, talking to the other artists there and talking to Michael, and Michael eventually asked me to be an apprentice sorry, in his studio. So I'd spend my days there when I wasn't working at the supermarket, and I would learn pretty much every aspect of art as a business. I learned. I was inking backgrounds. I was ruling pages. I was drawing layouts. I was coloring, hand painted coloring. I did every job imaginable in comics in that studio, and it was a great training ground for me. And I think that is what really got me into coloring, because you grow up and everyone wants to either write comics or draw them. No one aspires to be a letterer or a colorist or anything. But I found coloring to be like my thing. I kind of fell in love with it in the studio.
What is it that you think? What is it about coloring specifically that that drew you in?
I think for me, world building is kind of a hurdle So, starting from nothing, it's very intimidating, and I'm slow as hell when it comes to drawing. So, and no one's gonna pay someone to be slow and mediocre, right? But coloring, I was able to kind of come in to the black and white artwork and kind of finish it in a way, right? I could flesh it out. I could make it look solid. I fell in love with different effects that I could do in watercolors at the time for smoke or clouds or what have you. I really got into. I want to say what really opened my eyes as far as other books that were produced at the time was probably Electra Lives Again.
Oh.
It was Lynn Varley painting over Frank Miller, just like in the Dark Knight books. Um, and seeing what Lynn Varley was doing on the page, it really struck me, and it opened up that whole idea to me that I could enhance the work that was already there, that I could build on stuff that was already there. And I really liked the language of color and the storytelling aspects of it. It was just something that clicked with me, and I really just fell in love with it. And when I got to do it in the studio and understand it better on like a first person basis, it was mesmerizing to me.
Chad?
No, I was going to say, now being a colorist, where in the process do you know, obviously once it's drawn and written, when then, where do you come into and do you have any input into like what colors to use or anything that you might think might enhance the story being told?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm towards the end of the line, which kind of sucks because any deadline issues that pop up beforehand at the front end, they fall on my shoulders. So I still got to grab the ball and get to the end zone. But I love the storytelling aspect of it. You would think that, you see Spider-Man in a comic and he's always red and blue, right? But there are so many different things you could do in those reds and blues. If it's nighttime, you can cool them down. If the scene is high energy, you can ramp up those reds and make those blues more saturated. I'm definitely able to manipulate mood as far as the storytelling is concerned, and I try to move the reader's eye across the page, across the panel, whatever it is. I have to keep in mind that characters on the page, they act with their faces and their hands. So if I'm trying to move the reader's eye towards anything, it's going to be face and hands. If I'm moving towards like full body action, I have to make sure it's big. It's as big as the action. Kirby was great at that, of course. Kirby, whenever Kirby drew anything, like a punch or any kind of impact, it almost looked like there was a flash of light at that impact. So I try to, it sounds silly, but I try to keep that in mind, and I try to use light a lot to pull the reader's eye, wherever I'm trying to move them. And then mood in general, if a story is quiet, I'll lean towards cooler colors, blues and maybe some violets and some cooler greens. Something more action packed, definitely oranges, yellows, reds, grass greens, stuff like that. But yeah, there's still a lot of play in that realm, even with characters being specific colors. I can still, change the environment around them or kind of tweak their colors a little bit so that they read one way or another, depending on what I want the storytelling to do.
How do you feel that digital coloring has changed the game?
Well, when I first got my start at Marvel back in, I want to say '96, the first job I did for Marvel was a couple of color covers that were digitally colored. But when I started doing interiors, I was doing color guides, and that was in '97, I want to say. I started on an issue of Deadpool, and then I was coloring Journey into Mystery also. And that was all by hand doing color guides. I did a few issues of Captain America by hand. I love doing color guides. I love the tactile feel of the dyes and the markers and stuff. And I was using uh, the watercolor dyes and magic markers and colored pencil, maybe a little gouache, sometimes some paint. And that was a lot of fun because it's like painting. And unfortunately, as a color guide artist, you'd put stuff down and you would just hope for the best when you got the book back from the separators. I was disappointed a lot of times, but you kind of just trudge through. When I started doing computer colors, digital colors more consistently, I was definitely happier with the end result because I had more control. Um, I think it's probably easier to consider, Photoshop or whatever program you're using to be a tool. Like it's easier to teach an artist how to use the computer than it is, like a computer guy to learn art, right? Um, Photoshop or whatever software, it's a tool. It's a blank canvas. It's brushes. It's paints that don't mess up your hands, right? But you can still get them to react in a lot of the same ways or in similar ways. I think it's funny that we spend so much time in the late '90s getting digital colors to look nice and slick and flashy, and then like around 2010s or so, you saw a real push to bring back the texture of paint in digital color to make stuff look like watercolor or gouache
Yeah,
or
more
oil.
organic.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and I love that. I love that you can get that feel in digital color. I know that when that job moved more digitally, there were a lot of colorists who were doing stuff old school, color guides that kind of got lost on the way or couldn't keep up, I guess, because the change happened so fast. It was like Akira came out, and then the image stuff came out, and then Marvel started doing more digital stuff in the mid and late '90s, and then that was it. Like everything just went digital. In a span of like, I don't know, when did Akira come out? Like 90, it had to be like early '90s, I think.
Yeah, early 90s, 91, 92.
Yeah. So in a span of like 5 years, the job just changed radically and moved to digital, almost across the board. It was tough for a few people to get into that kind of digital mode. I was lucky that I had learned digital before that big push. And I had experience in the studio and working in Michael Davis's studio doing hand painted color. So I was in a nice sweet spot where, I started doing digital color on the first version of Photoshop, right? Like 92 or whatever it was, 93. So I was very fortunate to get in on the ground floor and have a good understanding of it and also see the way Photoshop has evolved. And, some things are good and some things are not like great anymore.
Sure.
But, just the evolution of the software, the evolution of the technology in general, the other softwares that have come into play, and just the way the market and the space has changed in comic creating.
You mentioned some of the more traditionally oriented colorists got left behind when things went digital, but I feel like it cuts both ways with the pencilers too. Like a lot of artists' styles just were more equipped for flats.
Yeah.
And traditional coloring and coloring guides, as you say.
Yeah.
And yeah, once you start applying the digital coloring effects, something gets lost, and their art just didn't look the same.
I mean, in the creative space, like we all have a shelf life. Hopefully, it's longer than we think it is. Sometimes we stay a little longer than we should, I guess. Depending on who you are. But you try to adapt and evolve and try to stay relevant with the tastes of whatever's being produced at the time. You hope for the best. You try your hardest. Sometimes it works, and sometimes you move on.
Right.
Hopefully, I still have a few years left. Like I said, I've been doing it for a while. I've been very fortunate in my career, so I really can't complain in that respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're still getting plenty of work there. So
Yeah, I stay busy. I seem to always be in deadline mode, which I guess is a good problem to have. So I can't really complain.
heck yeah, heck
Yeah.
yeah.
What's kind of like your average turnaround once you get the pages to color and before you can pass them along?
My turnaround is whatever the deadline has to be, unfortunately. Um, Sometimes, like this week, I'm working on a book. Um, I couldn't start working on it till Monday, and it's due tomorrow morning, right? So I got one more page left. Not a big deal, 20 pages. There are times in my past where I've turned around books in 24 hours. Um, it's not great, but it gets done, and sometimes it just has to be done, not perfect. I'll take as much time as I have, as much time as humanly possible to do a book so that I can make sure it looks as good as I can make it at the time. Um, Typically, I like to do about 3 or 4 pages a day. That I think that's a comfortable pace. If I need to do more, I'll do more. I'd rather not, but I can do that. But I think 3, 4 pages is a nice pace. You can get a book done in about a week and a half, and I think basically that's what everyone who does this stuff uh, strives for, about a week and a half, in general.
Huh. So given that sometimes you do have the dreaded deadline doom, that mean you've got some stuff that you look back on, you kind of go, oh.
Oh yeah, there's a book or two that doesn't have my name on it, just because it's not something I want my name on because I had to flip it so quick. But there are other books that I've done, like there's a book early 2000s, I think, Cable 103. I did in about 10 and a half hours.
Oh wow.
And I'm actually okay with the way that came out. I think it was not bad. Um, like I said, it's not the best circumstance to be in, but you have to roll with it, right? If an editor needs it in that time, I'll do what I can. And more often than not, listen, I haven't missed a deadline in 30 years, so I'm
that might have some, I mean, hey, that's certainly going to help keep you working.
yeah, that's probably it. Yeah.
Chad?
Yeah. So who do you look to for inspiration for your coloring? Who do you see as a role model or somebody to emulate?
So within comics, I'll say obviously Lynn Varley, Laura Martin, Richmond Lewis, Sherilyn Van Valkenburg, um, Dean White, Richard Isanov, Brian Haberlin, of course, Steve Olaf, of course. I learned a lot. One of the first jobs I got doing digital colors was working from Steve Olaf's color guides on a Superman Hulk crossover book, and just trying to interpret Steve's color guides to digital. It was an amazing learning experience for me. So definitely Steve Olaf is in there. I'll say outside of comics, Drew Struzan, of course. Everyone loves Drew Struzan, J.C. Leyendecker, N.C. Wyeth, Bart Forbes, Bernie Fuchs. Who else? Thomas Blackshear is an amazing artist. Really amazing use of light. I love his stuff. It's just amazing to look at. Who else? I know I'm forgetting people, but Robert McGinnis. I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Opposite end of this of things. Who's new to the scene today? Whose work really intrigues you?
Ooh, as far as coloring goes,
Yeah.
there
What are
is
these kids doing?
I mean, listen, Marta Gracia, not really a new guy, but his stuff always blows me away. It's like looking at candy, right? It looks so lush and it's just so pretty. I love his stuff. I love his stuff. I like a lot of the guys that work in that style. David Curiel, J. David Ramos. There's a guy, Robert Nugent, who's working on some Spawn books right now that look really good to me. You know, and then you got some other artists, Jordi Belair. Again,
Sure.
not really new.
Not
But,
really
you know,
new, but newer.
yeah, that stuff just really strikes me. Yeah, I love the stuff Jordi does. I love the stuff that Marte does. You know, just different ends of the spectrum, but they just their stuff just looks amazing. Yeah.
Chad?
So not only are you a colorist, but you also teach coloring.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I partnered with Andy Schmidt. Well, I shouldn't say partnered. I work with Andy Schmidt, who runs a thing called Comics Experience. It's been going on since I want to say early 2000s, and I teach a coloring class through his company. Right, been doing it since I want to say about 2008, maybe 2000. I think it's about 2008. Right. It's an online class where I kind of designed a class that I wish was available when I was coming up. So I teach coloring from the ground up, from its most basic to some more intermediate levels as far as techniques are concerned.
Mhm.
It's all based in a very strict art foundation. So all the principles I teach really just reinforce painting techniques because that's really what it is, right? It's using color to evoke mood, to manipulate the reader's eye, understanding values, how those are used, um, how to elicit certain emotions through color, things like that. So we developed two courses. The first course is an intro course that runs 6 weeks, and then there's an advanced course that runs 7 weeks. And I teach it live online, right? Just kind of like this, using meeting software. We record it. I give homework assignments. The homework assignments is really a chance for everyone to shine because they get to work on pro level artwork that's donated from all the big publishers, Marvel, DC, some old Valiant stuff when they were around, IDW, like their Star Trek Transformers. There's a nice wide array of stuff. It's not just capes and tights. So they get a feel for what it's like working on professional pages. They get a deadline. They get a week deadline to work on their homework assignments. And they really get to understand not just the usage of color, but the usage of lighting and basic storytelling techniques. I think it's a pretty intense course if you really dive in and give it all you got. I love teaching it, especially the color theory class. And I've been doing it for a while. It sells out every time. So, I think there's a good following for it. And we've had a lot of pros come in and take the class. We've had a lot of people who do indie stuff, and they come in looking to level up their skills. And I've had people come in on an indie level, and they tell me, "Oh, I want to do Marvel work or DC work." And then, if they put the work in, they get results. I've had a few of them go on and meet their goals. So, I'm very happy with it. My students always seem happy with it. And it's a nice way to also kind of catch these guys as they're coming up and get them to understand more of the business, not just making art, because I do like to talk about business to them, contracts, expectations, deadline expectations, especially editorial expectations, how to handle revisions and notes that you get from editors or artists. There's a certain technique to dealing with that stuff that I like to make sure that we all have the same information. So yeah, I like to catch them coming up and get them get them ready for like real world stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in your course, what are some of the fundamentals that you teach? Not that I'm trying to fish for a free lesson or anything, but
Well, I mean, night one we do all the like dry, boring stuff, all the technical stuff. I get them used to the tools. I show them what these tools can do, and I show them how to flat a page. But then we go into color theory, and one of the first homework assignments they do is a color study. And it's not something that you usually connect to with comics because, I mean, there's no time to do color studies in comics, right? But getting them to think in terms of, well, how would I block out color on this page or on this cover in a design sense? Like, if I want this to be an action page, what colors am I going to use for that? We discussed that in the class. Then how do I divide that up in color on this cover, let's say? So we discussed that in the class, and they start building and constructing a page from just a basic color idea to a lighting idea, and then from there they start to put it all together so that they understand how the color works with the light. And I think that's where, for some people, it really connects at that point. For some people, it really connects at the color study point. But when they get to the part where they start combining the lessons and putting this stuff together, then they start forming their own language and their own interpretations. And that's the part I really enjoy, because at that point I get to see, well, how does this person think? Right? And then when we go over the homework assignments, and I go through every homework assignment, anyone who hands anything in, it gets looked at, and I do a critique on everything. When I get their homework assignments, I'm able to kind of lead them down, whatever new path. If they need a different way of thinking of something, or if they are just not sure that they're on the right path, if they are on the right path, I can kind of reinforce that and explain how to take it to the next step. And like I said, they start connecting at that point, and you really start seeing their work come together. And you also see their confidence builds, and they get more comfortable. And hopefully by the time they finish that class, if they choose to go into the advanced class, they start taking more risks and doing more like funky things, and start exploring their style a little bit more, start to customize things a little bit more, maybe adding texture or doing different kinds of painting on the computer, for different effects. The part that I like is seeing that. Number one, I like seeing them make that connection, right, with color. And then I like seeing them expand their skills beyond wherever they were, because I can see their growth, seeing their homework assignments. I get to see how they build upon the last assignment, and you can see these little plateaus happening. There's one colorist who's he took my courses, and I'm still connected to him on social media, and he shows me stuff. And there was one point where I said something to him, and then he went back, fixed it, and everything started clicking. And all the portfolio pieces that he was working on up to that point, he threw them all out and started over, because he hit a new plateau. He didn't even realize it was happening until it happened. And then it started all making sense. So he scrapped his old portfolio and just dove in and started cranking out new pages, and they looked so much better after he made that connection. It was awesome. I love that part.
Is this somebody that's since become a pro in the comics industry?
Yeah, Steve DeSala. He's done some stuff. He's done some indie stuff. He's done some stuff at IDW on a Star Trek anniversary book. Still starting out. He's really good though, and he's just getting better, every day. Every time I see new stuff from him, he could still use a little more confidence. Like, he still comes to me, and I feel like if he just dove in and trusted himself more, Steve, if you're watching this, trust yourself more. But if he dove in and trusted himself more, I think he would surprise himself.
It's funny that's who you bring up, because that Steve has dropped a comment on us that calls you the best teacher ever. So.
Oh, this is great. I'm glad he's checking this out. Oh wow, that's awesome.
Oh, and he's here. He's still here and says thank you.
Yeah, Steve's
Very
great.
cool. Very cool. Yeah. So it sounds like you're getting a lot of fulfillment out of teaching.
I love it. I love connecting with the newer talent. I love still being in touch with them. I'm still in touch with a lot of them. I love seeing their creative growth. I love seeing I love it when they drive me crazy. No, it's all good. It's one of the things I look forward to the most is the teaching part.
kind of taking a step back from the teaching part, and as I was kind of going through your list of stuff you've done for another question, and I know that you have Alien Black, White, and Red issue number 3 coming out this week.
Right.
Is there a different approach that you have to take to something like that, where you're only using, have those 3 colors to work with?
That book in particular, the art is so good on that book. Like, I don't know if you've seen it. Michael's doing some amazing stuff in the black and white artwork, and I almost feel guilty touching it at all. Right? I look at it and it looks so precious to me. Like I want to protect it. Right? So I go in and I do the subtlest of things. I'm really just trying to figure out, his artwork is so great. What the hell could I do that could enhance what he's doing?
Right.
So a lot of that book in particular, that story, and I wrapped the last story like last week. That is me trying to not do a whole lot and step on his toes, because I really want him to shine, right? Like, my job is to make the artist look better, right? If it's a newer artist, sometimes I'll come in and I'll try to figure out what I think the artist's strengths are, and I'll try to enhance that stuff, right? Then there are times when the artist is so good, I really need to step back, because I should never be the star. Right. I should be helping the artist, be seen.
You're kind of like the backup singer.
Right. Yeah, I'm the backup singer. That's exactly
Good analogy.
Yeah. So I'm trying not to step on Michael's toes on that. And that is something where I look and I'm like, okay, maybe some red here. Maybe they let me use green too for some of the acid stuff. So maybe some green on some of the acid, or some green on some of the smoke. Red light, if there's a light, fine, I'll bring in some red there. Very limited, very delicate touches. I try to be very respectful of the artwork. Sorry, I'm very tongue-tied today. Other stuff like that, like I did a Moonlight Black, White, and Red a while back. That was me more jumping in and going, okay, where can I start blocking things in? Took a totally different approach than the aliens thing. And I was a lot heavier, but still, again, trying to be respectful of what the artists were doing on those books too. Trying to take, a bit of a backseat. And that was more like me framing things for the artist, just to kind of draw in the attention a little bit, draw in the focus. Mm-hmm. Right. But yeah, it's definitely different mechanics, different thought process.
Yeah, I was just kind of wondering, because that seems to be one of the things that both companies like to do, and I can imagine how hard it is, like you were saying, to not be too heavy-handed and let because it is the 3 colors, but you don't want it to be red, black, and white.
Right, exactly. I mean, it would be easy for me to just make everything red except the xenomorphs, or the talking figures, but that would just be, it would be overboard, and that's not helping anyone really. I'm distracting then at that point. Not like the Moon Knight thing, where I could do that and use that color as a framing device, or use it as an accent. different animal. Yeah.
And it sounded like you had to flex a few new muscles when you were doing that.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely. I mean, it's different techniques. Um, the alien story it's very gray tone. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to enhance the gray tone with red, whereas on the Moon Knight thing, I'm trying to put in large blocks of red of different kinds of red to do different things. So yeah, very different mechanics, very different, creative muscles, very different approach.
Do you have
Now,
any?
I
Oh no, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Chad, go ahead.
I was just going to say, that kind of caught my attention when I was looking. See, I mean, is there a character that you've worked on a lot of characters? You've colored a lot of books. Um,
Yeah.
is there a character that you haven't done that you would, you know, would be a dream project to work on?
Uh, yeah. Daredevil. I've done like an odd one or two stories here and there. I got to work on a Gene Colan story, Daredevil
Oh,
story.
wow.
Yeah, and then I did another story that never got printed, with another artist, with Carl Kiesel, I think it was, and that just never got published. But that was a lot of fun. Daredevil in space. But I would love to have a run on Daredevil, like my favorite character at Marvel. And I just have not had an opportunity to do anything substantial with Daredevil. I mean, other characters like Ghost Rider, of course, because the lighting effects and stuff, that would be fun. But and Moon Knight would also be fun. But Daredevil for me would be the thing. That would be my, I'd be very satisfied and consider my career, very very almost complete at that point.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Do you have any of the characters that you have worked on? Do you have any that you're particularly partial to?
I really enjoyed working on Nightwing at DC
Hmm.
when I was on that. I was able to do stuff on Nightwing that I hadn't done before. I like anything where I can do something different, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the aliens, black, white, and red. Nightwing. I'm doing a book now called Anansi Boys, which is a Neil Gaiman adaptation
Mm-hmm.
with Sean Martinborough, and Sean really pushed me to do something different. Like I love doing different things, and if you say, hey, I want to see something different on this book, I'm all in. I'll start, doing research, and I'll start tinkering with stuff in my head and on the page, and I'll take different swings at things. And I, I, I mean, I've been doing this for a while, so I like to keep it fresh, and that's probably what it is. Just me trying to make it fresh and exciting still. But anytime I can swing for the fences, then I'm hooked. I'm in.
Do you have any techniques that you've been wanting to try, but maybe haven't had the right venue for them yet?
I don't know. I think when I find a new technique or I work something out, I tend to just kind of dive in, and sometimes I shoehorn it in, which I really shouldn't do. Right. But yeah, I try to go in, and again, it's to keep the work fresh for me, right? I think that's one of the things I like about doing miniseries and stuff, or short runs on things. It keeps it exciting. But no, hmm, I don't know. Like I've had the opportunity to do a lot of different stuff, whether it was Nightwing or Captain Marvel in 2000 when they did the You Decide stuff. I don't know if you guys.
Yeah, yeah, oh, definitely. I loved
Yeah,
that stuff.
yeah. Captain Marvel. It was the first book that was monthly and shot from pencils, and I got to develop this new style to work on that book.
It's been a while since I looked at those pages, but I definitely recall their uniqueness.
Yeah, yeah.
Like there was nothing that quite looked like that on the stands at the time.
Yeah, I love that part. I love doing stuff that just hasn't been done yet, or stuff that I haven't done yet. Just try new stuff. So yeah.
Is there an artist that maybe you haven't worked with yet that you would like to kind of collaborate with
Ooh,
and color their work?
that's interesting. I don't know that I've thought of that. I haven't worked with Frank Miller.
Mhm.
Wow, or John Byrne, but John's not really doing mainstream comics right now. Or Howard Chaykin. I would love to work with Howard Chaykin, actually, or Mike Grell. Yeah, I like the guys that I was fans of, when I was younger and reading comics for fun. I don't know. Wow, I've been listen. I've been really fortunate in these years that I've gotten the chance to work with a lot of folks that I never thought I'd work with. And it's Keith Pollard, Jim Mooney, and even old John Byrne artwork. I got to recolor at times. Uh, John Jr. I'd love to work with him again, John Romita Jr. Um, you know, I've gotten to dip my toes here and there with either short stories or covers, and that stuff is always it's amazing to me that I've had those opportunities. So I can't really complain. I can't really cite anyone I haven't worked with, maybe except for Howard Chaykin. Oh yeah.
I can imagine his that coloring his art would be pretty interesting, just because he's kind of gotten more and more minimalist with his pencils over the years. And I'm not an artist, but I would imagine would afford you more of an opportunity to play.
I mean, his stuff, he can definitely achieve more with less.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that line economy, that takes an amazing amount of skill that, a few, maybe dozen or so artists have.
Mm-hmm.
Howard Chaykin is definitely a master of his craft. I like that he leans into the digital coloring, and he leaves a lot of room for experimentation in that respect. So I think that would be the challenge for me. I think that would definitely be interesting. Yeah. I'm definitely a Chaykin fan.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Now, aside of working with somebody else, have you given a thought of trying to do something creator owned? I know you said that it takes you a while to draw and stuff like that, but have you considered doing do you have a story that you'd like to tell?
I've got a couple of things I'd like to do. There's a project that I wanted to do with my daughter. She's a writer. She doesn't write comics, but she does write fiction. And I think it'd be fun to work on something with her. So I'm kind of waiting for our schedules to both kind of line up, and for her to finish with her next degree. She's back in school. She wants to get another degree. So she's, when she's ready for that, I'll definitely work on that with her. If I do any other thing, I would probably write and not maybe draw covers or something, or variant cover or something, but I most likely would not do the art duties whole cloth, right? I would definitely work with another artist and pay another artist to do the drawing, and I'll be happy to do the coloring, and I would probably do the writing. I've got some writing experience. Yeah,
Okay.
so yeah, but there are definitely a couple of things I would like to do. Yeah.
Well, I think right now, and we've commented on this in a multiplicity of interviews throughout the course of our show, but it's just kind of a playground right now of wonderful publishers doing exceptional work. I mean, you could pretty much go wherever you wanted. Are there any publisher, or is there a particular publisher that's just screaming your name right now, and you're like, man, I'd love to work with them?
I'm working with Dark Horse now for the first time on
Ooh.
Anansi Boys. Mad Cave is they're a bunch of guys that are really impressing me with their output right now. I think they're doing a great job. A buddy of mine is writing the Dick Tracy book for them.
Alex?
Yeah, we've got him coming up.
Awesome. Yeah, Alex is great. So yeah, Mad Cave definitely has caught my eye. There's a publisher I work with, Filbo, doing a book for them called Tragedy. They've been very kind to me to extend a hand. They told me if I ever wanted to do something with them, that I have an open door, kind of. So that's nice. But yeah, they're massive publishing. Mad Cave, of course. There are a bunch of Vault. There are a bunch of places that are doing some really exciting stuff. That it's been a nice surprise. I love seeing publishers go out and they're swinging for the fences, and they're nailing them. They're hitting home runs. And I love to see this industry as healthy as possible. So and you have that with healthy publishers.
I think in terms of just diversity of content, there's rarely been a more healthy time. I mean, you've been in the business for 30 plus years now. What would you say about that?
I agree. I love that there are publishers popping up. I love that they have long-term plans and not just short-term goals. I love that they're trying new things like Bad Idea. I think it's very interesting as far as their publishing strategy. This is like, I remember the indie boom in the 80s, right? Ninja Turtles and Cerebus and all that stuff. And the boom now is just so much. It's like a nuclear blast.
It just
right?
kind of keeps going.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It just keeps spreading. There's so many publishers doing different things, and I love that they're doing different things. I love that not everyone's trying to do superheroes.
Mm-hmm.
You
Well, Distillery is a good example of that.
Yeah, exactly. Or Three Worlds, Three Moons, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're doing great sci-fi stuff, great fantasy stuff. I love that, and I love the different formats. I love that now we have webtoons, and we have Marvel Infinite, and we've still got print comics, and they're in bookstores and they're in comic shops, and you can get them like all these different places. I mean, I wish we could still get them at newsstands, but there is product available almost everywhere where you would need it to be.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like the big box stores, they carry like a bunch of the Disney Marvel stuff, the stuff that Disney produces. I love seeing that stuff there. I think that's great. Scholastic book fairs, you see all that stuff, trade paperbacks and Captain Underpants and Dogman, and but everything counts. Anything that will get a kid to read comics, I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Because once you start, you just look for new stuff. I remember when I first started reading comics, I didn't stop at Marvel 2 and 169. I went and I sought out, Amazing Spider-Man and X-Men and Teen Titans and Batman and Action Comics and, Fantastic Four and everything, Marvel Fanfare and Marvel Age. One thing after the other. If I had an extra quarter or an extra dollar, that went towards comics. My parents would give me lunch money, and I would skip lunch and just buy comics. And I'd read them. I'd read them on the bus on the way home, or sometimes because I took the city bus, right? Instead of taking the bus, I would go buy comics with my bus money and just walk the bus route home. Which my parents didn't find out until about 10 years ago. And that drove them nuts. But yeah.
But they know you're okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And any extra money I had went towards comics. So if you can get a kid hooked on anything, whether it's Dogman or Captain Underpants, whatever it is,
my son loves Captain Underpants.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I was young, one of my gateways was Garfield books.
Right.
Sequential art.
Right. Yeah. My son used to love Captain Underpants and Dogman and Catman.
Mm-hmm.
And, he got hooked on that. So he would devour those books. And now he's reading like Kirby manga, he loves Kirby.
Well, I was at my son's school reading today, and they were so excited because they have the newest Dogman book from the library. So.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah, that is. They don't have to read what I read when I was little.
Right.
Let them read their own stuff. They have so many other choices they can make. Just let them read whatever it is they want to read. Let them read it.
Well, I think that's where a lot of, and I hate to make a broad generalization, but I think some older fans get stuck on is you need to like what I liked.
Yeah.
And they have this disdainful look of things that are different or unique or just not what was being published in the 1970s or whenever. And it's such an unhealthy attitude, right?
Yeah.
But I work part-time in my local comic store on the weekends, and like this, just the sheer scope of what people are coming in there looking for is just mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
We've got readers of all shapes, sizes, ages, genders, you name it, looking for something that speaks to them. And 9 times out of 10, I can help them find something that's at least in the ballpark.
Right.
And you didn't used to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And I think a lot of these grumpy old men are having a hard time accepting that the industry has evolved.
Yeah.
Here we are. And in terms of creative output, I think we're healthier than we've ever been.
Yeah, absolutely. You have the indie boom of the 80s to thank for the expansion of the medium.
Yeah,
you have Vertigo to thank for the expansion of the medium. It used to be that there was something for everyone. Now there's a few things for everyone.
Yeah.
And that's really where you want to be. You don't want to just, like, if you're a fan of 100 Bullets, you don't want that to be the only thing available. You want to go find other, like, true crime books and stuff.
Yeah.
There should be stuff for everyone, not just one thing for everyone, stuff for everyone. And comics as a medium should be evolving, not just with the times, but with the readership.
Yeah. Absolutely.
They could be stuck and keep churning out 90s X-Men comics for like the 40, 50, and 60-year-olds. But you know what? That fan base is going to die at some point.
Bingo.
And you will have not nurtured anything past that. You will not have fostered anything to bring in newer readers. And you can't do that. You can't expand a business like that. You can't grow in any way like that.
Well, here's a perfect example of that. Is I picked up a copy of Peach Momoko's Ultimate X-Men #1 when it shipped last month.
Right.
And I read it, and it is not for me. Like, it's just not. But guess what? I heard nothing but high praise and buzz from the 17, 18, 19-year-olds who just were floored by it.
Right.
That's healthy. That's the type of thing we need to see. And frankly, it's the type of risk-taking that we need to see more of from the big two.
Yes. Yes. I was so saddened when Vertigo went away as an imprint.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I would love to see Marvel, take more chances. I would love to see every publisher take more chances, take more risks. Like I said before, I'm glad these newer publishers are not just doing superheroes. They're doing other things like fantasy and stuff. Because you have the two biggest publishers already doing superheroes.
Yeah.
In the most recognizable way that could be done. So why would you tread all over that? And, why wouldn't you expand? Right. So yeah, definitely more risk taking, not just in content, but in distribution. Like, I want to see more risk taking everywhere. I would love to see new and different kinds of artists. I would love to see, new and different kinds of stories, new and different kinds of formats, new and different kinds of sales venues. Like, everything, I think, should just be thrown everywhere to see what sticks. And I mean, I know you can't do that financially, but the publishers that can do that, right, they should definitely do that. Like, that's why I like Bad Idea so much. The idea of how they market their books. They target the shops that they know can move their books, and they just stay there. And yeah, there are some people who will lose out and maybe not get their books, but they can find them. like comic readers are pretty resourceful. We'll
Mhm.
find the thing we want if we want it bad enough, right? So we'll call, we'll order online, we'll do whatever it is we need to do to get that book in our hands. We're relentless like that. So bad idea just focusing on certain retailers that they know they're going to maximize their footprint, they know they're going to maximize their sell through. I totally respect that. I would love to see their books everywhere, but I know for the health of their company, this is probably the right model for them, and it works for them. For digital publishers too, if that's the right model for them, that's awesome because you need that space too. You need that space taken up by
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Chris, we're coming up on our hour, actually slightly over it, but look, like looking back at your career and the arc of it, and just the unparalleled success you've had. Do you have any advice for your younger self?
First of all, I'm amazed anyone even knows who I am. So when you say unparalleled success, I have to chuckle.
Well, you
Make me blush.
inadvertently said it yourself, though, because you said that the general you might have a certain number of shelf life years, and you've certainly surpassed that.
I've been very fortunate. I tell everyone close to me, I tell all my friends, I've been very fortunate in my career. I've had a lot of great opportunities, and I can't knock that. Yeah. I'm sorry. What was your question again?
What was the question before you started rambling?
I ramble a lot.
Looking back, right? You've got several decades of experience now. What kind of advice would you have for your younger self?
I would tell my younger self, it's okay to be weird. It's okay to be different. Read comics in public. I couldn't do that in public when I was younger growing up. It was not a thing. You'd get your ass kicked. And I hid it, right? But I would definitely tell myself to be more confident, do the things that made me happy. If I wanted to read comics in public, do that. If I wanted to go to the museum instead of going to the baseball game, do that. Just do the things that I know I will find joy in.
Yeah. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I wish I would have known that growing up.
Yeah. You and me both, and probably a lot of other nerds.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So, kind of wrap things up. Are you reading anything that you recommend, and where can we find you? On social media and stuff. And I know besides Alien, you have the Amazing Spider-Man book coming out this next week too.
Right. Yeah. Shadows of the Goblins coming out. Just wrapped issue 2. The artwork is really good on that. Michael Stamaria is on that. Doing some really stellar work. I love the way he handles faces and emotions. Just really top-notch stuff. So I'm doing that. I'm doing a Spider-Man Infinite comic for their digital platform. I'm working on, like I mentioned before, Nancy Boys with Mark Bernard and Sean Martinborough for Dark Horse. Sean's been such a pleasure to work with. I love that guy. I'm and just a bunch of other covers and stuff, and anything that'll just keep me busy right now. We'll see what else comes up. The Alien stuff is all wrapped up, so that's I guess I think it was 6 stories it did. Yeah, so whatever number came out now, I don't know. We're well ahead of that, just by the nature of those licensed things. As far as what I'm reading, I'm actually reading a lot of older stuff. I'm reading the Sergio Topi books. I love Sergio Topi. Here, I'll show you one I got right here. Right. So the collected Topis.
Okay.
I've got 7 of these. I think like 9 of them are out or 10 of them are out, so I'm a little behind. But yeah, these are awesome. Sergio Topi is just a master with pen and ink. So that's kind of what I'm vibing on right now. Yeah. The books are really well produced too, although I heard that the newest one may not be of the same quality. I don't know. I haven't seen it myself. But a friend of mine said that the printing was a little, I don't know, suspect. So maybe I'll stop at 9 and not get number 10. I don't know. But yeah,
Until that completist bug gets you.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, that anxiety will start gnawing at the back of my head when I start reading issue 8, and just feel like, you got to get 10. Yeah, I know. So yeah, that and I've got a class starting in May. If anyone's interested in learning how to color for storytelling, you can go to
where
Comics Experience.
can people find your class and get signed up for it if they're interested?
I'm always talking about it on my socials, which is at Sotocolor, which you can find anywhere. You can find me on all the platforms. The classes themselves, if you go to comicsexperience.com, they have a full course list, and if you click on the art and coloring courses, you'll find my class there. We start the first Monday in May, and we run every Monday for those 6 weeks. So
Okay.
we're supposed to run 2 hours each class. A lot of times we run over just because, as you see, I don't shut up.
Neither do we.
Yeah. But it's a lot of fun. So.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for your time this evening.
Thank you, Matt. Chad, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Chad, do you want to talk us out?
I'll let you take us home.
Oh. Passing the mic to me, even though I was unforgivably tardy. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Thank you, Chris Sotomayor, for being our guest this week. And just folks, get out there, read yourself something awesome, support local comic stores, put something new in somebody else's hands. Get out there and spread the love of comics. And
check out the website.
Absolutely. Check us out at comic-watch.com. And we're on all the major social medias. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me, guys. I had
Thank
a lot
you,
of fun.
Chris.
Thanks.